One thing I've learned, if you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. You come on this radio show and you start saying inconsiderate things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way on the people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego. Or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous, and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. All right, we are back, and we're live. Feet to the Fire. I'm your host, James Arthur Yanchik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio, as we go into year, I think it's 18, 19, I don't know. Started in 2003, January 5th, so you do the math. I've been doing kind of a series, I don't know, themed shows, I don't know, the last couple broadcasts, talking about the concept of you have a field of choices to make in a time frame. And as you make the choices, the available options in the bigger frame shrink. And as time passes, that helps the shrinkage as well. Sometimes time-sensitive choices disappear when you haven't made a choice. So in these last couple podcasts or webcasts or whatever, I started doing this before the term podcast existed, so I don't know if I ever really know what the definition of it is, but I'm on Spreaker and they call it a podcast, so there you go. But the other shows I've doing at time has been like, well, you got battles and choices, and then last week was the Eye of the Storm. And it was kind of calm. Nothing really happening much. Waiting to see if the Senate, the joint House would accept the electoral votes as presented by the states, as certified by the Secretary of State. In some cases, I'm understanding in some cases not by the legislature or in spite of the legislature, or the legislature couldn't meet because of COVID rules. I don't know. But bottom line is there were constitutional flaws in how the voting took place, clearly. Supposedly because of mitigation by COVID, but that was not legal nor constitutional. They just did it anyway. So the big watch was whether or not Congress was going to then not accept them and then go into debate, potentially throwing out certain states, or I don't know. There's a whole list of ones. Doesn't really matter now because by now you know that they have, through troubles and through a changing of minds, have accepted it. When they had the Trump supporters on Washington wanting to stop the steal was the little catchphrase, the little hashtag. A group of Antifa intermingled or around with the Trump supporters broke into the Senate or the Congress building, which there's now video of the police letting them in, certain police letting them in. Many clear Antifa, all in black. You've never seen Trump supporters in all the years I've been watching Trump gatherings. Nobody dresses all in black. So maybe Johnny Cash could get away with that, various country stars, but, they're a cross-section. Even the bikers for Trump don't wear all black all the time. Anyway, so they broke in and made a big spectacle for the media. So now they're calling this Trump called for this insurrection on this worst thing that's happened since the burning of the Capitol, which is so ridiculous that for anybody to actually believe this stuff means that you have to have no critical thinking skills at all. Because nobody burned nothing, and yet when they did burn and do things for weeks, Antifa, that was okay. That was just peaceful protesting. So, all right, we all know that. So what has happened is because that last window of opportunity to catch their fraud and catch their vote-for-order programming and the violation of the Constitution, that passed now. And that's why the calm was there, because we had to wait to see what the Senate would do. Because then they would choose a choice. And if they would say, we have to redo it, then you would have the Antifa crowds most likely breaking out and causing trouble and all this stuff. But since they accepted it, now there's several different plans they have. This plan now, especially, was to have them infiltrate the Trump rally, do damage, claim it's Trump. Now they're claiming and they're going to try and impeach him. They want Pence to do the 12th Amendment, which he apparently refused. And the Republicans in the House blocked a unanimous consent to ask Pence to do this. So that seems to be blocked, and now they're going to go into impeachment. Why? With all this time left, one of the excuses is that they're trying to impeach him, which means the Senate would have to convict him as well. He wouldn't be electable in 4 years. Now, that sounds like a pretty lame excuse for this. It's more likely that they're taking the focus off the vote and all the fraud and all the unconstitutional stuff and trying to tar and feather Trump and his followers so poorly so that when they take power, they can start doing draconian, Maoist and Bolshevik type actions to round up the Nazis, round up the dissenters, and because they're just so terrible. Now, I don't know how people can actually take this. I don't know if their hate for Trump was so big that they don't mind this. And I don't like those Trump guy supporters anyway. They're all, cocky. I don't understand the hate and the stupidity behind all of this. But what we do have also is the people who are saying that the White Hats or the Insurrection Act has been signed and they're starting to arrest people and all this. This is still going on. And if I look at all options that are available without looking at odds of it happening or whether I like it or not, or, that's still possible. But every day as we look, the time is shrinking, options are shrinking. It is looking less and less like it isn't, because as of the swearing in, that's done. There's no authority on this unless the military at that point is going to act unilaterally. And if they were going to do that, they would do it now with the president. So people still believe it's going to happen, and I can't say it won't, but, we've been talking about this now, this insurrection stuff, for a couple of years at least. I know this stuff has been going on since the inauguration of Trump, and if it hasn't happened earlier, granted, more things and more incriminating things about the Democrats and the left and the Chinese backing and all these other stuff has come out. So, yeah, of course, it's a little bit more fresh, a little bit, as far as the options and whys and hows and all this stuff. So I can see that now, just looking at it without looking at the end game, the time running out, I can see now why it would be a richer, more obvious choice. But, you got to look at the clock. It's, the fourth quarter and it's ticking and you only have so much time to pull it together. So that's why I try to, first of all, I don't know, right? So I can't sit there and well, no, they're going to do it. And I hate that when people do it. They just say, blah. Now, I'll say something, and I'll generally, if you want to know, I can tell you why I say it. You may disagree why I say it, but I just don't think it or feel it or wish it to be. And I went through this whole thing when I rediscovered God, the Bible, and Jesus and all this. And it took a long time and a lot of details. And I can explain that if you wanted to at some point. Somebody wanted to know, I can explain it. And when I do these things, it's not necessarily as dramatic because there's less options and less things to do and ponder. But I do think about these things. I would love the movie where the guys ride in with the cavalry and save the day. I love that kind of stuff. I'd be weeping openly with joy. So it's not like I'm a negative person or I'm definitely not a black ops because, I'm not the disinfo guys out there being paid to do this because if I was getting paid to do it, I wouldn't have to drive a truck for 60 hours a week. So, but anyway, the point is I'm saying is that as the top options and time shrink, there's not much left that can be done. Meanwhile, the left, you want to call them the communists, the neo-Maoists, the neo-Bolsheviks, whatever, however you want to call it, that group, the globalists who are trying to crush the constitutionally driven republic, a democratic republic of America, and make it a tyranny where you have the three branches controlled by these tyrannists, and of course they can just add more justices to control that as well. So having all three branches controlled by the tyrannists would allow them to pass any law they want and work toward getting constitutional changes because you need to have a larger majority. So it would take a little time. They have the voting machines so they can program the winner now. So just take another election or two and it'll be locked up for the foreseeable future. Meanwhile, anybody who tries to do anything from the constitutional or conservative side, is being called a domestic terrorist. There's even talk in the House about declaring MAGA, Make America Great Again, a domestic terrorist movement. I mean, can you believe the craziness of this? I don't have any more friends that I can talk to that support Biden's side or whatever to be able to rationally talk through this. There's no more. They don't exist anymore. Either side, the gulf is a mile wide. So you can't even come to a common ground. And most of the people that I do know just simply don't like Trump and they don't want to, and they don't care. How is it doing for me? I don't care. So there is no discussion anymore. So as I look at this and I see, and I'm seeing these guys with, I have sources direct with, close to this and military sources and other things who are talking about how they're arresting people and doing all this stuff. I'm telling you, these people get clicks, ratings in the media. Ratings in the media, clicks in the web is the mammon that they serve as opposed to truth and God. It is amazing how these people can do this stuff. Of course, it's been going on for years. When I first started doing this, I remember I listened to Art Bell for many years. Yeah, at least, 10. I don't know how many. When he came in Chicago, because I know he was on later than, longer than that, but it wasn't until it was Chicago overnights and I was driving, working late nights, I can listen to it. Sometimes I would come home and finish at home and listen. But it wasn't until then I started hearing a lot about this alternative stuff, like the Jump Room to Mars and Planet X and all these things, which I thought were, amazing and cool, because I come from the perspective that people want to learn truth. So if there's somebody out there who really thinks there's a planet X, they got a bunch of reasons, and they'll be able to give you the reasons and talk about it. And I'm like, wow, okay. Well, when I started to investigate these things using my own, critical thinking brain, I mean, nothing major, there was flaws all over the place. And I found that Art Bell tended to gravitate toward the dramatic for the effect, i.e. ratings, rather than try to find truth. Though on some of his own personal opinions, there were places you couldn't go to. It was a no. You want to talk about the moon landing, at least initially, wasn't actually done. It was done in the studio. He would have nothing to do with that. But he would talk about other things. So I graduated from that into kind of applying my logic Bible study, critical thinking stuff, how I built my own understanding of God through the Bible, Jesus. When I built that before this stuff. So when I apply that to these principles, it doesn't line up. None of it lined up. Nothing actually happened. And there are people along the way who talked about things, and they go, they got a point there. There are some points about the moon landing that need to be talked about, but you can't talk about them because the pro-moon landing people won't even give you the time of day, and the against moon landing people, everything is wrong, is against. You could start getting into there's aliens living in the moon. It's your souls go there when you die, and you're being captured, and all this stuff comes out, and there's obviously, no real proof for that. Well, it seems to me that when Donald Trump ran for president, it was the internet and internet media that allowed him to circumvent the mainstream media, and it also showed how bad the mainstream media is. We always knew it was left-leaning, but now it became to the point where they would lie, cheat, and steal, so to speak, in order to get their way. And it was at that time, it was pretty much when Alex Jones's shining times, where he was, with his large crowd, was able to, get information out about Trump and other people that couldn't get out to an audience, which he grew. But since that time, it seems that the internet, either by design or simply by its own tendency, has turned into not only the Wild West, if you will, but it's turned into like a freak show where I can't even listen to Alex Jones now, even though there's good stuff that still comes through there, is because he's made it such, with his hyperbole, is such tarnished himself that, even though the point of a story is good, you have the whole, on cue, getting mad and yelling, looking at the cameras on cue. You got all that crap mixed in with the other thing. And believe me, I'm just not picking on Alex. And again, he's done a lot of good with stuff. You have David Knight no longer is on the show. You have Paul Joseph Watson has wisely kept arm's length because those people actually come up with real stuff without the hyperbole. So the point now is you have, it seems like as time has gone on now, you have the internet media melting, destructing, or being banned and deplatformed. You have this whole melting away of this point. And only the people that aren't popular enough, like myself, are still around because they're not catching the attention. If you're on the top and you're trying to you're fighting away all this stuff. You want to suppress the freedom of speech and freedom of in exchange of information and questioning of doctrine, propaganda. You're going to want to go and get the big guys first, so all the big ones get knocked down. And then once the bulk of that is taken care of, you can go in and mop up the little guys. So that's what we're at now, with Parler being turned off because of Amazon. Amazon wanted them. This is how I've read it. Amazon, who is the supplier of the server bandwidth, I think it's called AWS, is the company. The Amazon company does it. I mean, they supply bandwidth for the United States government, for the CIA and stuff. So they said you need to have moderation. In other words, you have to have a team that goes in there and will edit, shadow ban, which is the, editing, deleting without deleting, the one you can find it, or limited finding, or the actual deleting and warning and all this stuff. It doesn't have that structure. They wanted that, or they would turn them off. So they gave them an ultimatum, and as of midnight this morning, I guess, they were turned off because they use those servers. Gab uses its own physical servers, its own hardware, and so it's still been running, but it's being overtaxed by the flood of new people joining it, as well as fraud people, mechanical fraud people showing it, and what do you call those, hackers, attackers, and all this stuff. Plus, the simple drain on the system that they've built. It's one guy, but a couple guys that he's hired to do this, all for freedom of speech, and he's a Christian. And this is why they're doing it. But Parler is now down because they have to go out. They have to go out, if possible, completely mechanically build their own server system that can, support the traffic. And other systems have, like, for example, I was looking into Minds. I have a Minds account there, James Arthur Jancic. It has a judge panel that if somebody complains about a post, it goes before this judgment panel for moderation, whether or not it should be deleted or not. Now maybe they're fair, right? Maybe they follow the laws and the First Amendment as opposed to ideological censoring, but it's still there nonetheless. And if it's there, it can be controlled and morph over time, which is what has happened in Facebook and Twitter. They have morphed over time. Now, I wrote a piece explaining the problem, and, rather than just read it here, I think I'll attach it underneath. I got to remember to do that now. That tells me that I think the legal aspects of the First Amendment, the private businesses of the media, social media, and what should be litigated, and the conclusions that should come, which would solve all the troubles. It's easy for me to come up with that, being, not in there. And I'm sure there's some nuances I didn't think about. But anyway, it's a good. So I will put that at the end of the description here, so that you can just read it. It's on my Facebook page. I can't put it on Gab. It's too long, and also Gab right now is having a hard time. It's still working. Hang in there. I support them fully. It's a real independent system. But I can't put it up there. I will put it up on Minds and MeWe. I don't, nothing personal. I just don't like MeWe. Mine is got at least got an artistic feel to it, but I like Gab the best, and hopefully he can get it going over there. But we have to deal with these issues now. You're going to have I started to say this earlier. What we're going into now, as far as our options, is the options that are left are literally going in with the Insurrection Act and military taking over and doing all stuff. That's really the only option left if you want to have Trump presidency, which would be, I think, not only because he did win the presidency, it would be the healthiest thing for this country, while going after having the muscle and the law and the constitutional aspects of going after the bad guys. The odds of that happening, I think, are very slim, and I can't give you an odd because this has never been done. And there's a short time. So I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm not going to like attach to it, hold to it, hope to it, and then have to come back from it. I can easily jump on it when it happens rather than, pick up the pieces if it doesn't. So what I'm seeing is you're going to have Biden be president. Somewhere along the way, he will leave for whatever reason, and Kamala Harris will be president. And I don't know, I got a good guess that Hillary Clinton will be vice president. Of course, if I was Kamala Harris, I start watching my back, if that's the case. And what they'll do is they'll bring in D.C. and Puerto Rico states, which gives you 4 more senators. Right now it's 50-50, with Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker, so they really have a majority there, but it's a very slim one. So 4 more Democratic senators gives it a 4 majority. Still have that tiebreaker in the back pocket. So you will have the House and the Senate. You will have the presidency, and they will appoint new judges, new Democratic or what will be the progressive, whatever, the communist. I don't know. All those words are like bad because they all have background and stuff. There's not any new fresh word. Insurrectionist, I guess. I don't know. And they will outnumber the other ones. Of course, several of them are already doing a good job at this battle by avoiding on technicalities, convenient technicalities of dealing with some of the things. So, and if you have all those things, which to me would be the goal of the first 100 days or the first period of time, first half year, the first year, would be putting all these things in place. And now you can just mow down everything. Meanwhile, you're executive ordering away everything Trump did, changing everything he's done. Even though a lot of it's been really good, doesn't matter. They just need him gone. Okay, that's what I see happening in the first year. What's happening now with them trying to impeach him? They're coming out with things saying like MAGA is a domestic terrorist party group, and therefore will be arrested in and of itself. You have Trump going to be once he leaves office, they're going to try him in New York for some kind. I think it's kind of a fraud. Going back to the Trump, I don't know, it was Trump Tower, or Trump's College, or something like that. But they've been waiting because he can't do anything while he's in office. The goal is to get him convicted and in prison, where I believe it was not Clapper, the other guy, John Brennan. I think John Brennan said about him dying in prison. Because he's obviously a member of Deep State, that's what the goal was. He's going to die in prison. His family will be persecuted. If they can tie in any of the sons and daughters in his business works, they'll go to prison. They will be tortured in prison and die in prison. The Trump people will be rounded up. You will be considered a domestic terrorist by identifying with Trump, having Trump paraphernalia, supporting Trump, making statements like Trump is my president, and all that will be considered treason or sedition. I mean, treason is usually when you have an enemy, like China, that's backing you up, which is what they did. So that's, hello, good morning, good evening. That's what I see in the future at this moment if things flow the way they're flowing. Now, there's variance of that. Maybe it won't be as dramatic. Maybe there'll be enough pushback within the government. There are good people, some in there. It depends on the pushback from the people itself. The hardcore Democrats and people out there who hate Trump and the supporters and all this stuff, especially if they're non-Christian, either atheist or pagan or some other religion, I don't know, Muslim or whatever. I mean, it's funny about the Muslim religion. There's still people who are pretty nice in there, and then you have the radicals in there. It's just everywhere you go, there's these options. But it depends on what the reaction is from the populace, because if they clamp down a la Hitler and start arresting people and beating them up, and if the population kowtows to it, it depends on how much of the evil expansion, resistance, suppression is needed. Because the goal here is to take power, which they're doing, and then assert power. Because if you have power, the only joy of having power is asserting power. You just can't have power and be, if you're like a psychopath or a power hungry, whatever, you can't just have the power. You have to assert the power. And every time you move that line up to oppress more and more and more, it gets harder to assert your power without doing more abominable things. So this is where, I've said before, I think it's the end times. I finally come in and said, yep, I'm pretty, I obviously I don't know for sure. God didn't tell me, but it looks to me like these are the end times, and the oppression will get worse and until the formula events that are found in the Bible, lay out what will happen, return of Jesus, whatever. So I don't want that to happen. And if they would have contested the and checked for the fraud and for the constitutionality, and because of that, Trump would have won, which he should have won, being the winner of the legal votes. Then you would have the bad guys would be outside of the government, or they would be they'd be clashing inside, but the crust of it, the power of it would be fine. The military, Trump, and all these people. But now that the people fighting the bad guys are going to be in the outside of the government. I mean, again, there are some people in there, but it's that kind of it's not like the perspective, how you're looking at it. You're looking at it from the inside or from the outside. And this is where we're headed, looking from the outside. With that aspect going on, it does look pretty bad. That's why, a lot of people are still holding on to the Insurrection Act and them coming in and arresting people. And, again, I'm saying it's possible. I can't say. That's one thing I don't like is when people say definitively no or yes and simply arbitrarily or biasly pick the results and say, no, this is what's going to happen. What you think or feel is going to happen doesn't matter. It's based on a critical thought analysis. Your gut does part of it. You could say things like, well, it looks like it's going to happen. Wow, my gut's telling me this is going to happen. I'll accept that. It's not that I'm the arbitrator of it, but I think that there is valid in the gut. It's a spiritual insights. There's validity to it. But a lot of it, that's just the problem with any kind of spiritual intuitiveness, is that it is overridden by your emotions. Your emotions, your passions are much stronger than the information that you get from the more subtle feeling of the gut, or however you want to phrase that, where it comes in from the spiritual sense. It's a more subtle delivery, and if it's too noisy, you're going to miss it. Why the point of the Bible is the still small voice is a great example. I mean, you don't necessarily have to hear a voice. A lot of the stuff I get to kind of pops in me, but it's not like me thinking or me hearing or me feeling. It's like a third thing. And it's still subject to my analysis, because spiritual insight is not automatically good, not automatically right. That's why if you look on my website, who are the two icons, if you will, that I have on my website? Jesus Christ and Socrates. Socrates, the unchallenged. Is it the unchallenged? Yeah, I have to go look on my own website. By the way, feedtothefireradio.com is the website. It's banned from being mentioned on Facebook for those who are there. The unexamined life is not worth living. The two quotes I have up there from him is that, plus, this is without a doubt the most reprehensible folly. The folly of thinking we know what we don't know. And then the quote I have from Jesus, directing this to the self-appointed experts: they are blind guides of the blind, and if a blind man guides a blind man, both fall into the pit. So this is what, this is why I when people just say stuff, well, source is close to so-and-so, that's, okay, it's there, but it's very weak. And a thing I wrote, I get these kind of things I put on, I just kind of, they pop in my head and I write them out, little, what would be the word? Sayings, or I don't know, whatever. Musings. I wrote in there, if an event is real, it will become self-evident in time, either by seeing it, quote unquote, or by its effects. Reality does not need belief to be real. So if people say that you don't have faith in the storm and Q and all that stuff, you don't need faith in it for it to happen. It's going to happen or it's not going to happen, especially the way they present it. Have the popcorn and all that, sit back. Well, I tell you, I don't think I'll ever eat popcorn again after this is done. So it happens because it's real. It doesn't happen because you believe it. Now, a lot of people say that, well, it's all, reality is objective or relative, and if you don't believe it, it won't happen and all this. there is a quantum mechanics aspect of changing reality. You know, I can see where that happens, but if you believe Q is real, he doesn't like if you believe Pinocchio is a boy, he doesn't turn into a boy. You know, there's a reality, and then there's the creating of the future that has input by quantum mechanics, the spiritual quantum mechanics. I call it quantum mechanics because I'm older. That's what it was called. But, so this is the problem: is you can't just believe it to be real or not believe it to be not real. It's not that simple. While there's an intimacy to it, it's like, for example, praying and projecting, planning, quantumly planning, if there's such a thing, that the riot people will pass your house. You know, things can be influenced by that. Of course, there's always God and the angels who have some kind of authority who can do stuff. They can respond to the prayer and do it, so you don't have the quantum insight to change things. They do. I mean, there's all this kind of stuff together. But at some point, when you get to such a big thing, you can't will in something that doesn't exist into existence to affect so many people who are opposing as well. It just seems that that approach is too it's like not part of the real mechanics of things. And I'll go there. I mean, I think God, in my own personal opinion, God rarely enters space and time to do anything. If it ends up he never does, it wouldn't surprise me, because he created space and time from the beginning, and it's existing simultaneously with space and time, having started everything, knowing what it was all going to do, and then he's going along watching it play out. Having a compassion for those involved, whose desire is that all come to the glory of God, and that the mechanism is geared toward it will shepherd you there if you give a half a chance. So there's a lot of breaks going on. I'm looking real quick here. So anyway, this is where we're at now. Now we're not in a calm anymore. We're in the storm. The storm is swirling. The winds that are blowing are they're trying to impeach Trump, trying to portray him as an insurrectionist, that he incited his crowd to break into the Capitol and to try and take it over, which is, the narrative is false. The real truth is that people who infiltrated, along with some knucklehead Trump people, got into the Capitol. They were allowed to go in for a big media splash, and this is what's playing out right now. This is the storm. The one good thing that I always look for and hope is that, going back to that complexity theory, I'm really happy I heard about that. It was used in economics, but the whole point of it is that things are so complex. And since everybody is in play, like globally, right now, globally is in play, which is like the first time in history this really happens. And because of the technical aspects, it's real time global. It's never happened before. So there's a lot of, in the complexity, there's a lot of pieces that can affect. And in complexity theory, you can have a bunch of small things. You know, the butterfly effect, where a butterfly flaps its wing and then there's a hurricane on the other side of the planet. The idea that several little things that interact can create a momentum of choices that flood out and outweigh the big power brokers in this. And then again, in the back, you have what God has had planned in the background, it's been growing in the background already. So, I mean, to me, it's like this. I'm going to give you my example of what I think, how God could save you without actually having to do anything other than his initial creation. You're in you're being traced in a neighborhood. You're going to come and rob you or attack you. You're just running around. You run down a random alley. There's an opening. You go through the door there. You're in the backyard. You go through the door, and then there happens to be a birthday party, and there's a bunch of police there. And you tell them what's happened, and the guys come in there and they take care of you. You can't plan that at all because you're going out to do your thing. You didn't sit and go, okay, I'm walking down the street, going to go to a store, just in case somebody attacks me. At every single point that you're at, I'm going to research who lives everywhere and what openings are available so that I can plan to go here. Okay, this guy's attacking me here. I'll go this way. Forget it. Impossible. It's so complex. You can't do it. Every time, every moment, and every foot you go, and as you pass different points, you'd have to have a whole new plan. And depending upon rain, depending upon unforeseen events, like a car crash, they block this street off and you go down that street, you could not possibly plan this. But relying in God, who sees all this stuff and yawns, because it's not complex from the divine perspective, having been intimately involved with the aligning up of all things and the mechanisms that cause them to work, so he doesn't have to make it do it. He knows that the mechanisms of it are going to line up. So that when you have this relationship with God, when you're running away from the disaster and you are aware and open to that still small voice, even in that trauma, you follow, and even it's not only up to you, it's up to the door being open at the right time and the guy getting there at a certain time. All that stuff is part of the matrix of God. And it's no different right now. While we can look and see what's going to happen as being bad, historically terrible, worst things that has happened in this world as well as this country because of the universality of it. Because we see that, we can't possibly know all the options. We can come up with the most likely ones based on the knowledge that we have or the momentum of the item, the people, and the power they have. But, these people who are leading these things, all of a sudden they have a heart attack. I don't mean murdered. I mean literally just have a heart attack. I mean, they're not young people. Changes the whole dramatics. Any kind of illness, any kind of, fate in, building structures. I mean, I'm just naming stuff, but there's so many things that can happen. So this is why, even though things look dark, and even if we go down, yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I will fear no evil, because thy is with you. So even if you have the scenario where you're one of the people that go down into death or whatever from it, God is with you during those times. If you keep that focus, he's there. It's not if you do it, he's not going to be there. He's there. You got to keep open on this. And that's what I use in life. I mean, I have been in various times and now and earlier and later and all, been in times where I don't see ways out being peace or happiness or whatever. I don't see it. I gave the example earlier. It's almost a year ago, actually. Yeah, well, it was a year ago. I was owning my own truck, and I had a lot of debt piling up. I was off sick a couple times, built up a lot of bills, a lot of time off, expenses, lived on credit card, and trying to pay that back, and stuff happening. And even though on paper I made a good dollar, it wasn't working out when the bottom line, paying off the debt. The IRS doesn't count that. So you had the major taxes and all that. And I decided to, I had to refinance the house. wipe out the debt. And what happened was, as I was financing, I didn't want to do that, but that was the only option I had. As I was doing it, the company I worked for sold out. And the new company that was coming in was not good. So now I don't have the stability of a job, and they're in the middle of looking for financing, right? And even if I went with the new place, it's still a new place. Well, it turns out that, and then this is where the timing comes. I was thinking about doing this for months, and finally I did it. Well, it turns out that when I started it, when it ended, was the week that the company was supposed to switch over. So when they called for the final check, yeah, he still works here. Company was still there. I still work there. The whole loan went through. Now, and that's not irresponsible because I have another job and paying it, no problem. But they could easily just pulled out and had to start all over again. And then I would have a new job. And gee, is that going to be good enough? You know what I'm saying? So it worked out perfectly, even though when I chose to do it, if I would have done it earlier, it would have been easier. But because let's say I was putting it off, I got the inner nudge to do it, and I did it. I thank God for the inner nudge, and I'm glad I did it because it all worked out. It went from a catastrophe to smoother. I sold my truck. Now I'm a company guy. I don't have the responsibilities. There's a lot less stress. I make less money, but I make enough, and I have less stress. So, I mean, there is just a personal example about how all my mind was planning on how to do things, and I saw a house had to be valued at a certain amount for it to all work. I didn't think it would be valued at that, and then the appraiser come in and gave no problems. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a professional house appraiser, so I don't know, right? And it worked out. All the pieces fell in like smoothly, perfectly. It just flowed right through. Those 2 weeks just flowed right through. I mean, I was having heart attacks, couldn't sleep, stomach problems, and it's not my faith in God or the system. It's like, who am I? I don't deserve it. It's not like, well, it's me, so therefore it all works fine. So I don't have that faith that other people have. Some people have faith, and they shouldn't have that faith in what they do because they're not that good, but they think they are, and so they get this false comfort. And when the rubber hits the road, that's when they bounce, and then they realize it. Or me, I know the bouncing could happen, so I look for the bounce, and it doesn't happen. It didn't happen. Now, I'm not saying I'm correct. I should be more accurate on that stuff out of myself, but my whole point of telling you this was giving an example of navigating through life and trusting in God, so that, and in Romans 8:28, all things work for good for those who love God and are the called according to his purposes. The way I like to rephrase that, and I don't mean change it, but rephrase it in English, is the called would be the people who are believers in God. So you can not believe in God and things can work out or not work out. It's not the point. Is that all things work out for those who love God and are called and listen to him as they work according to his purposes. So if you're put in a tough situation and God is leading you through the valley of the shadow of death, all things will work out. Well, what if you would bankrupt? Well, that still would work out. You wouldn't like it. Our definition of work out means we want it to work out on our terms the way we want it. Now, sometimes it's reasonable, sometimes that isn't. But if you talk about having faith, you want to believe in Q and having it work out, all things work out. Q doesn't have that kind of power. And to say God sent Q, I don't see how you have the authority to say that. But I do know that as bad as things look at the moment, all things work to those who love God and walk in his, I call it walk in his umbra. Like the shadow, if you walk in the shadow. So I would say it to get the point across. All things works out for good for those who love God and follow his lead or go in the direction that you're led to. Follow the path that's being laid out before you. All things will work out for good. And that good that comes out of it has good purposes, even though it doesn't seem bad at first. I don't know. I could just make up stories. There's plenty of stories out there. People, have cancer, and then what happens is they go through it and they beat the cancer, and they find Jesus. They lost family members. I mean, there's all kinds of good stuff that happens. So naturally, I don't want the cancer. I don't want to have being hunted down by the left as a domestic terrorist. No, I don't want any of that. But God said that Jesus said that they attacked him, and he's the master. What are they going to do? How much more are they going to do for the followers? So this is the kind of thing that I look at, and I see all this stuff, and I go like, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Can I go out there and do anything about this? Can I go out and say, no, there was fraud here, and this should be right, and then it happens? No, I can't do anything about it. So anxiety comes from the idea of trying to solve something that either hasn't happened yet, or you don't even have the power to solve it. And the Living in the Now, that one book, I liked it. Acceptance is a gateway to the peace. I like a great example. I like with Bruce Lee when he's fighting in that one movie. What is it? Enter the Dragon. He's running around, he's going from room to room, and all these doors closed down. He couldn't get out. He checked everywhere, found out he couldn't get out, so he just sat down in the middle of the room and started meditating. That is those kind of visuals give me the point of what I should do when it comes to God. And right now, things look bad. I'm not going to trust in Q. I'm not going to trust in Trump's 15-dimensional chess things. I'm going to trust in God personally, that as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And all things that work for good for those who love God and follow his word, follow his voice, his whisper, follow that still small voice and go along with that. That is what keeps me going. It kept me going when I was trying to do the refinancing, going through the job. It kept me going when I was, in many times in my life. Even if I screw up and I'm in a position because of my choices. If I got there and you're in a position and you turn to God, all things work for good for those who love God. I mean, that's the way it works. God likes to help you out of the hole because God likes you. See, when I first understood that God is my champion, God is the judge and defense attorney. When God is on your side, who can stand against you? And if God, and I think it was from Job who said, even if he slays me, I will praise his name, or something like that. That's the aspect. It's whatever happens to you, if you're loving God and walking to his purposes, it will work for good. Even if your life is sacrificed, for example, you can help somebody else, and it could set a precedent to help thousands of people, or whatever. I'm just making stuff up, but the point is. And so when I look at what's happening now, I don't like it. I don't have any hope in the Q scenario, but I do have hope in the living God who created the universe, which would include me and the world and you, and that when you trust in God, all things, good or bad, look for or not, will work for good for those. And God likes it to be good, too. Not going to lead you down into a trap and say, well, I just want to make sure, some people die and I want, you're the one I chose. I'm going to lead you down this way and, just trust in me and it'll be okay. That's kind of that's not a way to look at it. And this is where this cosmic, what is it? What did you say? Quantum mechanics come in and all this stuff. Is that if you're on that page, in that vibe, all things that will work, you're in that quantum mechanic, quantum space shifting, whatever Cynthia Sue Larson says, this is space shifters. I mean, I've actually done it where I've think I have changed the flow of space and time to avoid an accident. I mean, I didn't sit down and go, well, I think I want to change the flow of space and time. But there was that point where I was in tune with it, and I, yelled out, no, I didn't want this. And all of a sudden, time lengthened and space lengthened so I could slow down in time, far enough in time. And I was shocked because there's no way I should have been able to do it. It was a total surprise. So, being aware of how that works, we tend to cause a lot of grief to ourselves. We don't have to. And I also know I'm looking at the clock. It's 55 minutes or so. My statistics tell me that most people don't last 20 minutes. So for those who stayed here, I hope it was worth your time. And I'm this is a Monday. I told you I was all my foot hurt. I got this thing in my knuckle, my big toe. It swells up. It hurts, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's gout. I don't know if it's arthritis. But given some time and keeping it lifted, it gets better. And since I did have a sick day coming, I thought I would take it to make sure it's better. And it is much better. So it's no big deal for those that are questioning about it. But I wanted to do a show today and keep my foot up yesterday. And so I'm doing it. God bless. I hope this helps in some way. And just remember, all things work for good for those who love God, those who follow his voice, how I would say it, or follow his lead, stay in his protective umbra, his shadow, however you want to put that ending on. And we'll just have to see what happens in the next week. We're supposed to impeach Trump by the end of the week, so, next week will be a whole nother cog in the wheel turned, another decision made, another group of options become less, ultimately culminating in the 20th when, that's another thing I heard, that they're going to bring 10,000 troops, not troops, what do you call them, National Guard, to protect everything. So that may end up helping in case there is a false flag Antifa stuff planned, like they were. But it also gets me really worried that these people who are fighting on the Bolshevist side, the Mao side, are very evil, have no conscience and no qualm, and are playing a very cold, direct game. They see the goal. They're on the edge of winning or losing big in either case. And they are coldly committed, made their choices. And so a scenario could come up where Biden is shot, they blame the Trump people, outrage takes over, they start arresting them all the time. Trump is arrested, everybody's arrested. Now Harris is president like they want her to do anyway. And who knows? This is the pin that we're balanced on. That something like that, which could happen, could then, of course, it's like 9/11, Kennedy getting shot, all of those things, all logic goes out to Raymond, and all they got to do is go, they did it, and the mob just freaks. So I'm praying, God, am I praying for protection from stuff like that? That's what I'm praying. Because, oh my gosh. I don't want to even play that scenario out of my head. But it popped to me, so I thought I would share it this last minute for those who stuck to the end. So, alrighty. We'll see you next time. God bless you, man. God bless me. God bless us all, everyone. Quote from Tiny Tim, I guess. All right, we'll see you later.
Retell your timeless truths. Feet to Fire is a production of IPS Media Works on the OnSync radio network of stations.